States. It's Mark from the United States.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Mark from the States. How are we doing today? I'm doing fantastic. I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for coming. There's Violet. Hello, Violet. Today we're gonna kind of jump in with Kara and Jeremy, Magic Geekdom, Americans who've been traveling the UK. This video has come requested by many of you. It is their British culture shocks, if you will. What surprised them, I'm assuming, or what they weren't expecting about traveling throughout the UK. And so, as you know, my son's going next summer. I'm going this summer after. At least that's the plan. Who knows? If I were to strike it rich, it would definitely be sooner. But it's going to take some time. It's not cheap to leave places that you know and to go to places you don't. And as you know, it's not cheap to travel. But with that said, I want to, before we get into this video, as always, please go and support their channel, Magic Geekdom. It's a really good channel. They're really fun to watch. I enjoy watching them. And I know a lot of you do as well, as I get a lot of requests to watch their videos because of all their traveling they do. They've seen quite a bit, and because of that, it allows me to see quite a bit through their lens, and I am very appreciative that they allow me to watch these videos with all of you. So please go and support their channel. They're amazing people and fun to watch. So also, before I go on, I want to go back to the last video that we did on Port Marion. I obviously went into that video and maybe with just, I don't know how to explain it. Some days I don't get it. I'm human. I don't get it. And I had a hard time watching that video. It was a good video, and I enjoyed the channel that we watched. Kirsten and Jorg, I think, is what, two Germans in the UK. Go support them as well. But I got fixated on it was such an amazing place, but I was so fixated on why and how it came to be, I guess, that I admittedly kind of lost sight of the whole purpose of its beauty and amazing architecture and just the gloriousness of it all, that I was so wrapped up in trying to figure out why it was built in the first place. And even though I was given the reason in the video by the couple doing the video, and even reading the exact same thing on the Port Marion website, I just, for whatever reason, wasn't accepting it. He just wanted to prove that he can build something magnificent and still retain the beauty of the existing landscape. And many of you have called me out on that, and I welcome that. Let me just say right now, I am not one of those who can't take criticism. I can, and I welcome the criticism, because you were right. I came into that video for whatever reason in a mindset of trying to understand why it was built and not accepting the reason that was given, and that was wrong. And I appreciate everybody who pointed that out, because normally, and if you've been watching my videos long enough and hanging out, you know that's not really my style. Normally I am just in amazement, and while I still was in amazement, I still had that nagging why, even though it was just staring at me and told to me and, all that stuff. And for whatever reason, I just wasn't grasping that. And I lost sight of the point of these videos. And it really, and thank you to the ones that called me out on it, because it allowed me to kind of sit back, watch the video again, and realize, the point of why I'm watching these with all of you is, one, because I enjoy being with all of you. Two, is it allows me to learn and see things that I'd never seen before. And I was seeing something I'd never seen before. And I made a prejudgment, I guess, that of why this was built. And, that was wrong, because I stepped away from my normal letting it just, wash over me and allow me to just sit in its wonder. I was already having prejudgments on it, and that's so, I'm human. I didn't realize until after the video that I was coming off that way. So I'm sorry about that. So I really do appreciate all of you who pointed that out, because I do need that. Like I said, I'm not immune to maybe having a bad day. Not saying yesterday was that, but just or having just kind of the wrong frame of mind going into a video, which I apparently did. And after watching the video of myself doing it, I realized, gosh, I wasn't taking in all the wonderful things that it was showing me. I was taking in my preconceived preconceived ideas of why it should have been built. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know. It was weird. It was watching a weird dude trying to dissect something that didn't need to be dissected. It just needed to be appreciated. And that's what I'd like to try to do on this channel, and I'd like to think that I have, for the most part, just appreciate the beauty and wonder that I get to see on a daily basis from suggestions that all of you have given me. So thank you for helping me find my way. You all mean so much to me, so I just want that to be out there. So enough of that. Come sit on this big fake couch. I believe we're going to see something interesting today. We're going to hear about Karen and Jeremy's experiences and what they think are culture shocks, I guess. I mean, I know that term gets used quite a bit. You see on videos all through the YouTube sphere. It's most of the time it's not so much a shock as it is just something a little different that we're not normally used to. So that's how I'm going to experience this. So please come sit with me. And again, thank you for all the love and support. You guys are truly amazing people. And let's see what Karen and Jeremy have to say.
We have been traveling through England on our way up to Scotland with our American friends who have never been to the UK before now. And it got us thinking about some of the culture shocks that we have experienced, both the first time that we came to the UK, their experience here in the UK, and
some things that are potentially like positive culture shocks and things that might be hard to get used to if we were to stay here long term.
And since we are in a hotel room right now, let's start with the hotel differences, because I think for me there have been some pretty large things that have been kind of an adjustment, something that I didn't even know was not a thing. Excuse our kind of disheveled bed. This is a king-size bed. This is a king for us anyways. Bed sizes, booking hotel rooms have been very confusing. I did not realize before we came here that we had different bed sizes. So sometimes when I book a king, it's more like a queen-size bed. I think we've finally gotten used to like the translations of like a king here is more like a queen is more like a double for us.
Something like that, and a single and a twin, I don't know. It's still sort of confusing to me.
And that is only confounded by the fact that we stay at a lot of Hiltons because we have built up a lot of points with them, so we redeem a lot of points with Hilton properties here in the UK. And Hilton, they use American sizes even here in the UK. So like this is a king size bed, and for us it is a king size bed, but I think you guys here in the UK call it a super king. I didn't realize that even like the sheets are different. We have a flat sheet in the US, like so you have your fitted sheet that goes on your bed, and then you have your flat sheet, and then you have your comforter or your duvet or your quilt, whatever you call it. We have those 3 layers, and I didn't realize that here in Europe that the flat sheet is just not a thing, just doesn't exist. We just go from like here's the comforter to here's the sheets. I think it was weird because I just thought at first that it was just one place that had it, but
no, it's pretty much just a duvet and a bottom sheet.
The other big adjustment, and this is a tough one because
before they get on to the next one, yes, I'd heard about the bed size, and we here at my house, I guess we would what you would call a king, we call like maybe an extra large queen. It's not quite the king size, but it's probably would be considered a queen, I guess, for my wife and I. We don't have a huge bed. We never really considered needing a huge bed. But I did hear that our kings would be known as super kings. And I'm not sure where I've heard that before, but I probably in a video, I'm sure. But I call it a bottom sheet, but they call it a flat sheet, and it's essentially it's to keep the duvet from getting sweaty and your skin cells on them. You know, it's just a sheet that is between the duvet. I call it a duvet, whatever. Comforter is a common term to use here in the States. Between that and your body, you have a sheet. Now, we don't even use any more now. Sometimes in the winter we'll bring it out, but the comforter, normally that kind of stays away. We just have like 2 more sheets that are like it's like almost like a blanket, and then like the bedspread. So we just have those 3. Since it's been so warm, most of the time I'm kicking them off anyway.
It makes it really hard with like traveling with food. This hotel, probably because it's a Hilton, has a little mini fridge, but this is one of the few hotels we've stayed at that actually has one.
It just seems like it's something that's uncommon here, which when we're traveling around and trying to eat a little better, at least by going to the store or something, that makes it a little difficult unless we're in more like an Airbnb or something.
For sure. I think tying into that, and this is something that we haven't truly experienced yet because we haven't had any major heat waves or anything, but in the US, it's pretty uncommon to find a hotel that doesn't have air conditioning, AC, we would call it. I think you guys call it aircon. We have it in most hotels, but we've also stayed in several hotels that they don't have it, and probably because they're older, and I wouldn't expect them to necessarily upgrade to add AC. That is just something that I think would be very difficult to get used to long term.
That's probably fair. And Airbnbs and stuff that we've been in where it's a house or a flat just mostly don't have it at all.
But
they do have aircon. It's called opening a window, right? That's from what I've in other UK videos. Opening a window is generally the common practice of when it gets hot. But then you have to deal with bugs, right? So window screens are a must to keep the insects out. So there's that fine battle that I've been told that goes on when it gets hot and there's insects. So you're wanting to somewhat get cool, fresh air, but yet you don't want all the bugs inside. I know the modern places are all starting to have some sort of ventilation, air conditioning, or at least ceiling fans, that sort of thing. But yeah, they're realizing that many of the structures in the UK have been around for quite a long time. So the refrigerator thing, though, in the hotel, that's interesting. Yeah, essentially, if you're staying in a hotel, even some ratty, dirty motels here in the States have refrigerators in them, and air conditioning for that matter. I can't remember the last time I stayed in a hotel or any sort of accommodation that didn't have a refrigerator and a air conditioning. Even very, very old. I've stayed like in San Francisco. We stayed at a really old, from the turn of the century, late 1800s, 1900, that hotel, and it had gotten upgraded with air conditioning and refrigerators, of course, but the building itself was very old. So it's going to cost money, obviously, but interesting. It
also brings me to another thing. I knew before we came here, especially because we had kind of started getting into like the British culture before we ever came. I had no idea that we had so many different words for things, different spellings for things. I think even like the names and how you pronounce places has been like a complete adjustment of like, okay, what does my brain think that would say versus like, what does my brain now think that would say based on how I've heard other words that are similar looking. The aircon AC thing is like definitely.
I want to add, before they move on to the next subject, yes, this is one of the differences I can say just in doing this channel that I've noticed. And by all means, it is not a bad thing because, yeah, I should learn to pronounce towns, name, places, things. I should be able to pronounce them correctly, especially if I'm going to come and visit. And I do want to do that. So every video, it is an opportunity to learn. You see how it is. Now, I kind of understand how certain words are pronounced. Like I remember when I first understood, for instance, Edinburgh, not Edinburgh, the berg is actually bruh, and a lot of you helped me along the way to be able to at least get close enough with the pronunciations, and that is what has been obviously one of the amazing things about having all of you with me is the help that I do receive. But with that is if I do mispronounce a word or even like for instance, trooping the color. I think I had said trooping of the color, and I had many correct me. It's just stuff like that. And while, maybe some people would take it the wrong way, I don't. I think it's awesome. I need to learn the proper way of saying things. But that is definitely a difference between people here in the States. If you were to come here to the States and mispronounce a word or, mispronounce a phrase or whatever, I don't know if I couldn't tell you if anybody would ever correct you. I'm not sure if, maybe it's because we don't care about the proper name, and that's just a difference between our two cultures, which, I'm not sure why that would be. I'm sure there are people out there that would make a point of saying, like, and here's an example, because I do correct people. I don't. I actually don't correct people, but I will say to my wife, why do they say it like that? But our town name is Ventura with a T. You hear people on the news or on TV or whoever say Ventura, like CH, VENCHURA, not Ventura, it's Ventura. And it's just because they get lazy with the tongue. But that's probably the only instance that I'll ever even, that from hearing it kind of will grate on me. So I guess I understand why you want things pronounced correctly. And it's amazing that I'm able to learn from all of you, because if I pronounce the word wrong, I will definitely get the correct way of spelling it. And that's awesome, and it is a big difference. So that I really do try to pronounce things correctly. And with your help, I tend to get there.
One of those things where like we just keep learning these like little differences in our languages.
And even like learning to pronounce a town correctly, and then I'll say it correctly, but then I read it, like see the letters and read it out loud and go, oh, that's wrong. I just said that wrong.
Yeah.
And I know how you say it.
Yeah, like we were just in Yorkshire, and Jeremy knows it's Yorkshire, but like reading it, he kept saying Yorkshire.
I know it's Yorkshire. When I just talk about it, I say Yorkshire. Reading the word out loud, for some reason, I was saying Yorkshire. I don't know.
And I think that
I'm with you,
we
Jeremy.
continue on, we are going to continue to learn all of these like subtle little differences in our words and what we call things. And like even like at home, we would say at a restaurant, like for here or to go is like the phrase we would say. But here it's like
here, in or take away.
Yeah, sit in or take away. And like it's like kind of fun to see our American friends who've never been here like start to learn the language and like ask where toilets are and things like that. Things that like words we don't really use. I would put that in the column of things that I enjoy, because I also feel like kind of special when I start using words like, oh, it's posh. It feels very posh to use the word posh as an American. Sometimes you say you're knackered now.
Sure, and you can talk about your favorite Spice Girl and feel confident. She's not your favorite Spice Girl.
Who?
Posh.
Oh no. P.S. Just so you know, under my cool Beetle sweatshirt, I am wearing my Spice Girl shirt because represent. My favorite Spice Girl was Baby. Is Baby. Like nothing happened to her. She didn't go away. Who's your favorite Spice Girl? Ginger.
She probably was. I don't know who really is, honestly.
Who is your favorite Spice Girl? I want to know. It's important, burning questions that I have. I think another thing that is kind of a shock, not just the first time that we came, but the times that we've been since, is like you get in and like you're so used to I guess now I'm looking right, so that
I'd have to say my favorite Spice Girl is Ozzy Osbourne. That's about it.
is the right direction. Oh man, am I getting used to it? I feel like there's the whole thing where we drive on different sides of the road. Yes, that's a thing. It is a shock, especially the first time that I drove here. I'm pretty used to it now, but I think still like the directional thing of like crossing the road as a pedestrian is kind of confusing. And I think the piece that is always like weirdly triggering or like anxiety inducing is when I'm driving on the left side of the road and I'm making a right turn, because I always like look behind me because I always think that there's going to be a car in the other lane, because I'm thinking like traffic is going in the right hand lane when it's not. But that one I think is very disorienting at first. Like the first time that we got into London, and I think part of that is like London is just a big city and it feels kind of overwhelming to be there for the first time. And then you're like not sure even which way to look, and sometimes there's one way, and like nicely they've put which way to look on most of the streets, but it is still disorienting. That does bring up a point of like driving. The roads are very narrow here.
Especially on the country roads, or when there's cars parked on the side and it's not very wide, that you get pretty close to the sides of said cars, or a wall that just continually looks like we're 4 inches from it, and it's off-putting. I don't know.
I never really wanted to drive, but I think after watching several videos and all this time, I do want to drive. I want to drive of course, a Mini Cooper S. let's go ahead and make it the S model. And yeah, I would love to drive. Maybe not so much in London because I don't care to ever drive in New York or LA. I hate driving in LA, as a matter of fact. But I would love to drive those country roads. Definitely, maybe a smaller town. But yeah, definitely a Mini Cooper S.
Have much larger roads in America, just like across the board is basically the situation. And I think if you've never been here and you are interested in driving here, I think that there are some incredible places that are just better to see by car. I would definitely encourage you to drive. It can be a little bit terrifying. Just don't rent a car in London like we did. That was a terrible experience.
It's kind of funny that when we've returned rental cars that people are shocked how far we've gone. Like, oh, you went 1,000 miles. And it's like, yeah, over the course of a week or something like that. Like, I don't know, just everything is closer here since it's a smaller country, and it just seems like there's a lot of people that don't want to drive to something.
It is. It's just funny that people seem like off-put by like what would be considered small distances for us.
Yeah, you talk to people and they're saying, oh, how long a drive is it? Oh, 2 hours? When we lived in Orlando, you had to drive like 4 hours just to get out of Florida.
One thing that we have noticed while driving is that we have seen some buses and bus stops in very remote places. And I think that that just speaks to the volume of like how amazing the public transportation is throughout the
Public transport. Right? It's not transportation, it's transport.
UK versus America. Like I think at a certain point in the US we were just like, no, we don't do that. We drive everywhere. And I think cities are trying to start having more public transportation because it's better for everyone to have it, but we have a lot of infrastructure problems because we have not grown in the way that you have. Like even like trains. When's the last time you took a train that was in the US? Because it's been like 10 years since I've taken a train, but we've taken like 30 trains here in the UK now.
I've taken one as an adult.
I've only gone Portland to Seattle on Amtrak. That's like the only train of reference in the US I have.
Yeah, that's the only one I have. But yeah, then we've been on, like you said, maybe not 20, but a good solid 10.
Oh, we have done at least 20 trains here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like when you think of
Just
like,
say
okay,
yes.
we
Each
switched
direction.
at that train, we did this, we
Yeah,
did that.
fair. Yeah, I
like
guess so.
we've taken a lot of trains here at this point.
That's true.
It's just interesting. I also think like in the US, there's kind of, I would almost say like a bad connotation with taking public transportation. Like something
Yes.
happened in the history of like marketing cars or something that we are like, no, we don't take the bus. And I think it's amazing because like we've definitely had our growing pains with learning how to use the bus here. Like, not that we've never taken the bus. Like, Jeremy and I have both taken the bus in multiple places that we've lived. It's just, like, I think kind of similar to states even, is, like, every bus is maybe slightly different. Not really sure how it works. And so I think that's kind of the hurdle that we've crossed with buses here. But, I mean, I think the fact that you can, like, literally the Isle of Skye, pretty remote parts of the country, and there are bus stops. We've seen buses. Public transportation is just amazing here, and I hope that you guys don't take that for granted, because you shouldn't. I wish we had that in the U.S. You know what one of my favorite culture shocks is?
We definitely need a better system here. Normally trains now are for long distances, unless you're in a big metropolitan. They have trains, but they're just subways, right? So that they will get you throughout the city. But if you want to go any sort of distance, those trains won't take you. There are two sets of trains. You know, there's the Amtrak, which will go country, but then there's each metropolitan city, and only the big ones have any sort of train, subway system. Buses are still a big thing, but yeah, it has been looked down on. We're such a car culture, and I guess the bus thing is, you know, if you had to take the bus, that meant you didn't have money for a car. I guess that would be what they're talking about, that you're poor or less fortunate or whatever. It's dumb because buses are a big deal because it helps people get around, gets cars off the road. There's a lot of good in taking the bus. I took the bus for a little while when I didn't have my car. My car had broken down and it was in the shop for a long time because I couldn't afford to get it fixed. And I took the bus for a long time, or walked, So I understand what they're saying.
What's that?
Old things.
That you're surrounded by things that are much older than at home?
Yeah, it's just incredible. It is very awe-inspiring to be in a place that has so much history, so many churches, like even taking just trains through the countryside, and I'm like, oh, look at that cute church in the village, in that little village. It's wonderful. There's just so much history here, and so much we still have to learn about that history.
Every time you go to a new town, it's just like, how long has this been here? How old is this building? Why is it here? I don't know. There's just a lot, and it's much older than anything at home.
Yeah, and I think we didn't really learn a lot about British history in school. I mean, anything a lot. We didn't learn a lot. We didn't learn anything about British history. And so even learning, I remember we took a culture test before we came here. And it was what happened significantly in 1066. And at the time we were like, well, I don't know. And now I'm like, oh, I know what that is now. And we haven't been there, but we've driven through that area. So it's interesting, to learn about the history in the place that it happened. Yeah, it's fascinating. Definitely fascinating for us, especially because of tying in the royal family and everything. We don't have anything like that in the US. So as Americans, the royal family is very intriguing and just interesting to learn about. Our royal family is America's sweetheart, Julia Roberts. I don't know. Who would be American royalty?
I don't know that we have real royalty.
We have movie stars. That's our royalty.
There's a lot of people that probably don't care who Julia Roberts is at home.
I'm one of them.
About.
So you mean it's more about people that have passed away, Elvis? Is Elvis royalty? Elvis is American.
Our version of royalty was definitely the Kennedys, John F. Kennedy, and that whole family. I think that was probably the closest thing that we had to royalty.
Royalty?
I guess sort of. That's not exactly.
He's the king! Michael Jackson, the king of pop. See, we got kings too.
I guess.
Another thing that I would say is kind of a very different, I don't know if it's a culture shock, but it's definitely something I didn't really know a lot about before we came here. I mean, it's how we're culturally different. I guess Americans are more known for being more forward, and Brits are a little bit more, I guess, reserved, or they wouldn't necessarily speak their mind. And we actually had somebody, we ran into a person just talking to a lady with our dog, and she had a dog, and she was basically telling us that she loves Americans because if her salad comes out wrong at a restaurant, that she'll send it back, and she learned that because she had an American boyfriend, and that a lot of people here wouldn't do that because they think it's impolite. And I mean, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if your salad is wrong, you gotta send it back. You need to get what you paid for. And so, I don't know. I just think that's an interesting cultural difference because I appreciate how polite that you are. But sometimes you can be polite and still say my food is wrong. Can you make it better, please? Maybe you're the more polite one of us. Maybe you wouldn't send back food that was wrong. Depends how wrong it is. No, that's true. That's true. Because I wouldn't necessarily say something if it was minor, but...
No, if I ordered a sandwich or a hamburger or something and there was onions on it that I don't really like, raw onions, I just pick them off. But if something's cooked very wrong or missing something and I paid for it, no, I would probably say something.
Yeah, that's true. That same person that we were talking with, she was also saying that a thing that she likes about Americans is that if if she were to compliment someone, oh, I love your shirt, that Americans would say thank you and British people wouldn't. They'd be like, oh, this old thing or whatever. But I feel like sometimes I compliment people that I see, like, I think nail polish, like, I love nail polish. And sometimes I see people with cool nail polish and I'm like, ooh, I love your nail polish. And almost every single time that's happened, they've said thank you and they've been very like, oh, cool, I'm trying a new color or something. So I don't know. I haven't really experienced that, but that was something that same person pointed out. Yeah. You know, speaking of things that British people tell us, I feel like a lot of people are like, apologize for the weather.
You grew up in the Pacific Northwest. We both lived there for at least 10 years. Like, it's pretty similar to here, and I feel like we're used to it. It's not the climate that we came from starting these trips, because we were living in like the Florida area, but we're still used to it. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I think we also sometimes get comments on videos when the weather isn't as nice. I mean, we've been pretty lucky with the weather, fortunately, but when we have gotten comments, sometimes people are like, oh, I wish the weather was better. It would make it look more appealing. And it's like, sorry, we're in England or wherever we are, you know. But I don't know, it doesn't bother me. I think maybe because I grew up in a very rainy climate that we've been here at the beginning of good weather this year, and I think just seeing everyone rush out like, oh, it's a nice weekend, let's get out of here. I can definitely relate to that. Although I don't know. I am still a little bit concerned about the air conditioning, the aircon in the summer, so we'll see. Okay. You want to talk about restaurant culture?
It is kind of different.
Definitely different.
Your service staff is kind of an interesting, different thing, and I feel like overall we've experienced pretty good service here, but I know the culture is different because of tipping or the lack thereof here.
Yes. I also think, I don't know if it's like
Yes, we know that they get paid a better wage over there, over where you're at, so they don't need tips, and that is understandable. So they don't need to, but I think that probably gets a bad rep, though. Of course, I think every server and worker who is in the service industry wants to do a good job, wants to make the person happy. I think human nature, you want to do a good job. I think it gets a bad rep. Like, I've seen other locals, British locals, say the service is terrible and that they've been to America and the service there is top notch. And I think they might be overblowing it a little bit. I mean, yes, I do think some places here in the States has just unbelievably wonderful service, and they are very attentive. But here's the thing: I've also heard that a lot of you don't want the waiter or waitress or the server or whoever to keep coming over and checking up on you. Kind of just leave us alone, let us enjoy our meal, and then when we're done, that sort of thing. So there's a couple ways of looking at it for sure. But a lot of these I've heard basically because I've been watching their videos and others for sure.
The love of capitalism that we have in America, or what exactly? I don't know if it's like impolite here to bring the bill, but in the US, like, they'll just bring it to you. And I mean, that has its pluses and minuses. Like, maybe you'll feel rushed to get out of there if they just bring you the bill. I think one of the things that's weird is like showing up to a restaurant and just being turned away. They're just like, no, sorry.
I mean, I feel like that would happen sometimes at home for like maybe a really small place where they are booked up and they're just like, we're not going to.
Normally they say it's going to be
like you said, most of the time they're going to sit you at the bar
then
or
it's
put
up
you on
to
a
you
list, or
they'll do whatever they can to get you through that restaurant.
There.
And like just yesterday, we were trying to find food with our friends and we went to 4 different places. And they were just like, no, sorry, we don't have anything. And we could see empty tables. I'm sure it has to do with like wait staff and shortages and everything. Like, it's just something that as Americans, like, it's like confusing. It's like, but why? There's a table right there. It's just like one of those differences that I think is kind of a hard adjustment, that we've gotten so used to like high customer service, because they're trying to get those tips. Like, they're counting on that tip and they need that tip because it's not built into the wage. And so, yeah, it's just very different. You know, the other thing that was really different and so confusing is that there's like a law here about the grocery store being open on Sunday and how long it can be open.
That can really affect you when you're trying to shop, especially if you're doing it on the weekend. Like, you only have limited time to do that.
I just think it's that, like, that American mindset of, like, there's always something, unless you're in a very small town. There is always something that's open. Like, you can always...
Did I know about this? I don't know. Tesco's and those supermarkets are not open all the time. Man, there are times I go shopping at 6 a.m. my time, or even 11 o'clock at night, to the grocery store and do my shopping. It's all depending on when I'm available. I think they used to be open even earlier, but I think one time I went at 5 in the morning, but I think they open at 6 now, and they close at midnight every day. That's every day. So it does give you the flexibility to go, but there's also a bunch of 24-hour places too. So if I needed to get, and even in my town, there's a bunch. If I need to get milk or butter or eggs or anything, there's places that are open 24 hours a day.
Find something somewhere that's open. You can always find food. You can always, get groceries somewhere. And that just doesn't happen here. You have to do a little bit more planning.
Yeah.
And I think as Americans, like, we can do that. It's just like we're so ingrained to having access to anything that we want at any given time that it's like, wait, what do you mean I can't shop at 5 p.m. on a Sunday? What do you mean the store is closing at 4? It's just different. It's different. It's not used to that at all. But you know what is nice? Not having to calculate tax.
Yes.
And it's nice. I mean, we've lived near places that don't have sales tax, so we can be used to that depending where we're at. But yeah, it's a nice thing to not have to deal with.
I mean, for example, like, you go to a restaurant in the US and you're like, oh wow, $10, what a good deal. Well, you have to still pay the 8.5% tax or whatever it is, depending on where you are. And then you also have to calculate in, your 20% tip, and that meal becomes more expensive pretty quickly. So
yes, this is all true from what she's saying, but we're so used to it that you make sure you calculate your 20% tip before the tax. You're not tipping on tax. At least you shouldn't, but a lot of people do because they just see the total, and then they tip on that. You need to tip on what the actual price was before tax. But even I will just tip the 20%, especially if it's like for $10.15. I'm not going to look to see what it was before the tax was added on. But we already know, we're ingrained. It's not that big a deal here in the States now. I know it is for people who don't experience it. It is. But for me and many's, we just assume and know that there's a tax. So, and we already we've bought enough things for $10 or close to it that we could kind of already know without having to do math in our head that where it's going to be right around, $10. Okay, I have 11 here in my pocket, or 12. I get out $12 to pay for it because it's $11.52 or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's just, but the VAT tax definitely is a cool thing, and I know a lot of people run for office here in the States who run using, we should have a flat tax across the board.
Is nice here that the price that you see is the price that you pay, and if you want to give a tip, you can, but it's not, I think 10% is standard. Sometimes they'll charge a service charge, but yeah, it's just nice. The tax thing is nice. It's nice to, like, no matter where you go, to not have to calculate tax. Although we do have to calculate that into dollars, so there's still a conversion happening behind the scenes, but hey, there's not two conversions, so that's good. I don't know about you, but I feel like I could go on with these, like, subtle differences for hours.
I mean, there's a lot of little things.
But I would say that those are, as American tourists, what has been our experience as some of the cultural differences and cultural shocks that we have had. Like we've probably said before, we love the UK. We love England. I mean, hey, we keep coming back. It can't be that bad.
That's a weird way to put it.
I know, I'm just teasing. But we love the UK. We love coming here. I love learning about some of the cultural differences that we have. I think there are some things that have been harder adjustments to get used to, but I think overall we really enjoy it here. I think in the back of our head as we travel, we constantly think like, could this be a place that we could live? Could I see myself being here long term? And I think overall, yeah, I mean, I don't think the differences that we have are that different. And like I said before, like it's fun to learn about our differences. Okay, I bet the internet's dying to know. Carly, what are your cultural shocks about visiting the UK? Carly would probably say that how dog friendly everything is definitely a good cultural shock for her. She's shocked that she can go in all the pubs.
Or at least most of them.
Yeah, I think maybe New Orleans has some dog-friendly bars, but she's not really been able to go in very many food establishments in the US, like hardly at all. So the fact that we've been to quite a few here, she enjoys. I know she likes it. She also loves footpaths. She loves all the smells of nature. She can get out and enjoy. Right. I would say she likes taking the train, but I don't think she loves that part. I am curious if you are American, if you've been to the UK, if you've experienced any of these, or if you have experienced something that we didn't mention. If you are not American, but you have been to America, I'm also curious if you have any cultural shocks about visiting America. You should leave us a comment and let us know. I'm curious to hear.
Please go support their channel. Wonderful, wonderful people. Fun to watch. Yeah, it's something I'm really looking forward to, is coming to visit and experience all these culture shocks, right? I think I'm going to have an advantage over some Americans who haven't been watching and doing a channel and trying to learn as much as they can about everything. I think I'll have an advantage over them when I do come visit. So maybe it won't be as weird. And yeah, I think one of the things that sticks out is that just knowing wherever you go, the history is going to overwhelm you. Because there's just so much of it that you don't have that here in the States. So we just go places. Yes, there's history. Like my town's been around since the 1800s, but it's not oozing with that history. You've got to go to a museum that we have here in town and learn about it. You can't visually see, because here in the States we don't like to keep anything. We tear everything down and rebuild, make it new, which is unfortunate. I can only imagine, if we didn't get into the habit of doing that, what there would be, But luckily, in the South and on the East Coast, there's still a lot of old plantations, and I know that's kind of a negative word, but I'm talking about the house and the property, and so those are still around. There are some places in the Northeast, that still have some of the original buildings. Out here in the West, I'm sure there's some adobes, Spanish adobes still around. Well, of course, the missions that we have in my city, plus I don't know, there's like 20 some odd missions up the coast of California that was built by Ventura, and way back, way back. I couldn't even tell you. I want to say in the 15, 16, 1700s. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah. So that, of course, I have it right here in town. When it involves the Chumash Indians and Junipero Serra and the mission, yes, those buildings are still still available for us to see, but known that since a little child. Anyway, it's a long video. I'm sorry it took so long. Thank you if you've stayed with us the whole way. I'm looking forward to coming, for sure. I absolutely am looking forward to coming. And I hope when I do that maybe I'll get to see some of you. Of course. You will all know when I do. And hopefully we can meet up. But that's still a little ways away. Hope everybody's happy, healthy, and safe. Feel free to add anything. Like I said, this is a lot of the stuff I've already seen with others, but it's enjoyable watching them. And again, thank you to the many of you who suggested this video. I hope you all have a great day. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark. And he's from